Welcome to Microdose the Mind, where tiny doses create monumental shifts. We're your hosts, Brian Schwartz and Jeremy Wolf, and we're here to guide you through the fascinating world of microdosing, both in plant medicine and daily habits. Get ready to expand your mind and reshape your reality.
Hello, friends, family, great universe. Welcome to Microdose the Mind. I must say, I have been going through it lately. And I know you, Brian, we've been speaking a lot about this. You've also been going through it. And our guest today, I believe she's also been going through it. Energies, as they say, have been heavy as of late. So I thought it would be fitting to explore probably one of the most frustrating truths about being human. We often know what we need to do to grow, to heal, to evolve, but actually doing it, well, that's the hard part. So why is it so difficult to stay consistent in life, to stay positive, and to stay aligned with the life that we want? And more importantly, what tools do we have at our disposal to help us realize this? Joining us today is someone who lives and breathes this work. Marilisa Lawless is the force behind Hemp del Sol, Crystals del Sol, the Transformation Project. She has her own podcast, the Hemp del Sol podcast. Be sure to check it out on all your favorite platform. Really good stuff. And her mission is all about helping people reconnect with themselves, raise their frequency, and actually live the transformation that they're after. And if there's one word I'd have to assign to Marilisa after having known her for several years now, it would be authentic. With Marilisa, what is what you get. And that's something that I've truly come to love about her. So I'm happy to have her on the show. We welcome you, my lady. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, yes. And Brian, we speak every day, but it's always good to talk to you, brother.
It's a pleasure to be here, brother. Thank you for having me on. Marilisa, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And this should be fun because, again, this has been on my mind for a while now. And I want to start off with this question. I want to ask you both this question, and then we'll go from there. This is something I've been preoccupied with as of late. And it's, why is it that we tend to self-sabotage even when we know better? I want to start with you, Marilisa. Ladies first, guests first. Why do you think we're constantly getting in our own way and stopping ourselves from realizing the life that we want?
Some of it has to do with our early training. We come into this lifetime knowing exactly what we need to do, knowing how to heal, knowing how to move forward in life. And then the people that are raising us are trapped by their own limitations, and they teach us to stop our own healing, stop our own moving forward in life. So it's not about necessarily blaming the parents, but it is who's raising us, and it's their belief systems. So as we grow in adolescence, that's why you see such angst with adolescents, because they're starting to connect with that again. And they know that they need to break free of what the elders are teaching them for a period of time until they come back and they ground and they figure out what they need to do for themselves. So I tell people change is really difficult, because if it was easy, everybody would do it. People are very much tied into what is comfortable and familiar. And in order for people to change, they need to be put into a position where they are uncomfortable so that they're willing to move into an unfamiliar place. And that's the only way healing happens. Because otherwise, if we're comfortable, even if we don't like where we are, it's familiar. And it's not until we reach that place where it's uncomfortable and it's so uncomfortable that we're willing to move into the unfamiliar. We have a card that we give out to people, or we used to. I think we still have it around here. And my mom, who started this practice with me and my sister, the expression was, and we put it on business cards and handed it out to people, when the pain of your pain is greater than the pain of change, you will change. And that's the bottom line. We as human beings don't change. We are pain avoidant. So until we're willing to go into that place of, okay, let's deal with this, why change? It's working. It's working. Why change?
That is so well said. First of all, back up a second. Is everybody hearing a little strange echo, or am I stuck in my own head here? I hear this little.
I hear a bird. I thought somebody had a bird.
You not hear it? Like, what
It's
is going on with the signal today? You sound like bird chirping, right?
yes, that's why I thought maybe Brian had a bird in the background.
Pretty more else can't see.
Maybe we've been microdosing before the show.
My spirit guardian is here.
Oh, it's too funny. Yes, that makes perfect sense. We sabotage because it is in its nature uncomfortable to grow and to heal and do all these things. So we throw up these subconscious flags to stop us in our tracks so we don't have to go through that pain and uncomfort. It's really a catch-22, is it not, Brian?
It is. You know, and Marilisa, I love what you said. And the thing that came to me, what I keep hearing with pain, and I believe with Carl Jung, who might have said, there's no coming into the conscious without coming into pain. So essentially, the higher we elevate in our consciousness, the deeper we have to go and feel our pain. And I know a lot of self-sabotage is based on running old patterns that are not in our awareness. So when we're trying to create a reality, we're creating based on conscious and unconscious patterns. And I know from my own personal experience, the higher I elevate and the more I live and I create my reality consciously, the more of my own pain and my own suffering, my own programs that don't serve me come to the surface. And this stuff is uncomfortable, like you said. It is uncomfortable. And I also love the saying, discomfort is the price of admission to freedom. Right. On this journey of learning what's the opposite of self-sabotage, I suppose, is to self-connect, right? It's to self-attune, it's to self-grow. And I think a lot of us, to piggyback on what you said, we're not raised with our parents and our friends and family kind of teaching us a healthy way to create our reality, where they're teaching us what they knew, which is based on what was taught to them. And here we are in this spiral of unlearning and really relearning who we are, right? To create the reality that we know we deserve and we want to create. Until then, the unconscious will continue to drive our life.
Yeah, many times we have flawed operating systems being installed as we're raised and as we get things put in place that aren't serving us. And then we reinforce this and it becomes programs that run subconsciously. And it just becomes, the longer you run those programs, the more difficult it is to unwind them. And that's really what I've been experiencing over the last 5-6 years. But does it have to be, like, I've thought about this a lot lately. Is it necessary to feel that deep uncomfortability all the time? Like when you're dealing with a stressful situation and you get that trigger and it throws up that resistance, that uncomfortability, like what if we just step aside from that and instead of getting triggered, recognize what it is and embrace it and lean into that and be grateful for it and thankful that you're experiencing that and really flip it on its head. So does it really have to be uncomfortable all the time?
Okay, so I'll jump in with that one. So it's a yes and a no. So the yes is that because we avoid pain, unless we have community, unless we have support, connection with other humans to go through this, we're going to avoid doing it. So it's like the pain is necessary, but it is decreased with how people live in community. It's about having connections with other human beings. So much of our pain is created because of the isolation that we have. And that sense of isolation is part of the challenge, is part of what most people are having struggles with right now. And I have two analogies. One my mother used to tell me, it was about childbirth. Both of you might not get that, but you'll get the analogy. And I don't know if we can say bad words here, but I'm going to repeat what my mother said to me. She said, I was pregnant with my son and it was time to go into labor. She says, I need you to remember this. You can choose to be in a lot of pain for a really short period of time, or you can choose to be in a lot of pain for a long time. You decide the length of pain or the amount of pain that you want to be in. She said, you just have to have the visual that you are trying to shit a 10-pound bag of potatoes. I said, I got the visual, but she said, choose the amount of pain you want to be in. Excruciating for a short period of time or a lot for a long period of time. I was like, okay. So either way you go about it, it's going to be painful. We get to decide how long we want to be in pain. People that get stuck in addiction stay in that pain for a really long time. instead of saying, all right, this is what's uncomfortable. This is my lack of connection to the world. And I'm ready to just hit it head on and dive in. So that's the one analogy about pain. Yes, it's painful to change. The other piece that just came up for me is something that I teach clients, and it's called the Johari window, Johari. This one box is our unconscious. These two boxes are something else, and this one is what everybody knows about it. This one is what I know about me, but I don't want you to know. I'm not ready to share. And this box is what you know about me, but I can't see it. We spend our whole lives moving things into this public box where it's okay to know this. I know this about me. You know this about me. And where I use it with addiction is like, yeah, I'm an alcoholic. My family tells me so. Yeah, I get it. You don't really get it. Everybody sees that you're an alcoholic, you're an addict, and you really don't get it. So it hasn't moved into that common knowledge until you're like, yeah, I'm an addict and I need to do something about it.
Yeah. Hold on.
So,
So please, Marilisa, continue. You were talking about the, what is it called? The hair, what's the name of it?
Johari window.
Johari. Johari, like Johari Dental? That new Chamber of Commerce member?
Possibly.
Record word? No, that's Joe
I think
Nari.
it's her fame.
No,
Yeah.
we're Joe Nari. Okay, anyway, I digress.
So with these four
Continue,
boxes,
please.
these are the two that come into therapy. Okay. It's well, our goal is to get everything into this place where what I share with the world is I'm comfortable sharing this about myself with you. Everybody knows it. It's no big deal. This is who I am. But therapy and in self-exploration, you're looking at these two boxes. What are other people telling me about myself that I don't get it yet? I don't see it yet. And so it's about exploring that. Like people will come into therapy or come into this form of self-exploration and saying, people keep saying this about me, but I don't really see it. And then there's this other piece down here that I get this, but I don't really want the world to know this about me, but I'm pretty comfortable with this and I'm just not ready to share it yet. So through that self-exploration and growth, you're constantly learning. So I get more comfortable sharing this about myself. I get more comfortable. Okay, I get it. So then it moves into this box. So then it becomes common knowledge. By moving things out of these two boxes, we can get into the unconscious, our subconscious, unconscious area, and then it continues to filter throughout our lifetime into those two boxes. So what any of the alternative healing practices are doing is helping to move this a little bit faster. That's all. It's moving stuff out of this subconscious place into one of those two boxes for us to either have other people look at us and say, dude, you really need to look at this. Or, yeah, I know this about myself. Let me see if I get past the shame, the guilt, the whatever, and own it and share it. That's the whole healing process. You choose your method of healing.
Choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a lot to parse. And I think it can be difficult trying to integrate that in. So let's talk a little bit about some of the tools that we have at our disposal to help us through this process. And I know, gosh, how many decades have you been doing this, Marilisa? At least 3 decades, right? Didn't you start the Transformation Project back in the
91?
91? So yeah, it's been some time. You've really been walking the walk, as they say. So
I've also been in recovery myself since 89. Yeah. So I've been on my own, and I started my own healing process as a teenager and trying to find my own way out of the mix. I've been doing my own work since I was a teenager. And out of my own work is how I ended up becoming a therapist. Why I am a therapist, why I do all of this is because of my own journey, because of who I am and what I went through in my own life. And how many people can I bring on this journey with me?
I want to talk about the therapy aspect, because I think that's at bedrock, that's the most fundamental thing. I think working with others and getting feedback from people is very important. But I want to start off by talking about plant medicine, because this is something where Brian and you, Marilisa, overlap. You with the CBD business, and then Brian with what you do with cannabis and psilocybin and all these different other types, which technically psilocybin is not a plant medicine, but it falls under the same umbrella, I guess you could say. So
plant, the fungus, it's still a plant.
Yeah, what was it?
I don't know, but cannabis is the parent of hemp and marijuana. So they're different families, but yeah, no, psilocybin and any of those things are still plant medicine. Ayahuasca, psilocybin, it's plants.
Yeah. So these plant medicines that are available to all of us, they are just tools. And
Correct.
when used inappropriately, without intention, go back 20, 25, 30 years of my life when I used to experiment with all these substances, it was strictly for pleasure and to have a good time. But they are very powerful tools when used correctly. So I want to talk a little bit about some of these various modalities, these plant medicines that are out there, and how we can incorporate those into our day-to-day lives responsibly so that we get the most out of these experiences. And a lot of that leads to the integration and the therapy. So why don't you start, Marilisa, and talk a little bit about the CBD aspect of the business that you do. And then Brian, you can fill in from there on the THC cannabis side of everything.
Okay. Sounds good. The CBD is relatively a new thing that's out and about. It started in about 2011 with Charlotte's Web, and it became something that it's been being studied for. Marijuana and cannabis itself has been studied for 50 years, if not longer, 80 years by the government for various uses. The CBD became more mainstream about 2016, 17. And somewhere in there, because they started to understand that it was helping people with their sleep, was helping people with pains, aches and pains, anxiety, all the different things that I would treat here. And I had clients, not customers at the time, but clients walking in and saying, have you heard of this? They were holding up these little bottles. So I have another sister who's a drug rep, and she just started investigating companies. Went through a lot of different companies, but found one that seemed reputable, tested everything. Everything was third-party tested. It wasn't just random testing. And started to see our own results. Practiced with family and friends first, and then moved forward and actually opened up a retail store because of, and again, I have to say it's anecdotal because we're not allowed to say as non-medical professionals what it will or won't do. I've seen it change people's lives. I've seen people come off of all kinds of opiates that they were taking for pain. I've seen people come off of all their sleeping medications and sleep better. I've seen people just their anxiety getting off of the diazepam family, the benzodiazepine family, all the tranquilizers, because this was like a natural form of healing. And it's just CBD oil and coconut oil in a bottle. They've advanced and made other forms or other modalities of administration, but really the best is that and I've always had other natural healing things with the crystals and meditation and all the other things I do, but the CBD was pretty significant. And we still carry it, and I've branched out and I carry a couple of other companies. I have another company that's courting me right now, reached it from Wisconsin. And so far I've gotten really positive results on their product. So I'm always looking for something that's better. And again, the research is the important piece for me. So that's where the CBD falls into it as a healing modality. My whole goal is to keep people off of pharmaceuticals. Anything I can do. If you absolutely need pharmaceuticals, I have doctors that I use as well to refer people to. But I do a lot of things in between actually sending you to a doctor unless you insist.
Yeah, it really should be a last ditch resort. And unfortunately, the society that we live in, it's a first resort in many cases because people say this all the time. We live in a quick fix, instant gratification society. And if there's a shortcut to get what we want, we often take that shortcut. The problem is that it's not addressing the underlying issue. It's treating the symptom, and it really is just a Band-Aid. And the more you do it, further away the root of the problem goes. And it just keeps getting repressed deeper and deeper. And it takes more work, more pain, more discomfort.
Well, when you think about it, MDs were always trained as allopathic physicians, meaning that you present a symptom, they treat the symptom. The DOs, the osteopathic medicine, when that came on, was seen as, oh, this is not good. But they were the first medical professionals that actually started to look at the whole body, the underlying cause. And then they've migrated into functional medicine where they're actually looking at root causes of illness and disease. The medical profession's catching up. Johns Hopkins has been doing psilocybin treatments for 15 years now. They've been doing experiments forever with psilocybin as we move into Brian's expertise.
Thank you, Marilisa.
Q.
That's your cue.
That's my cue. Thank you very much. And my personal experience with plant medicine, and specifically cannabis, mirrors a lot of your experience as well. Like Jeremy said, I grew up smoking cannabis and I had
Well,
stopped.
but I want to ask, cannabis is marijuana and hemp. People make the
Correct.
mistake of just labeling it cannabis. So you're speaking specifically about marijuana, not smoking hemp. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So I started smoking marijuana when I was a teenager, and I stopped in my early 20s because of the belief. First of all, I stopped because A, it was illegal and it was frowned down upon. I have a daughter. I want to make sure I stood a good example for her. And when I was listening to the news and to the media, there were all kinds of conflicting information. And mainly it was saying how bad it was for me. And my journey in recovery as well. I got sober in 2012. I had stopped anything that was psychoactive, right? Fast forward into my journey in 2018. Now, for the 5 years after I stopped cannabis, I start listening to the Western doctors and I start going to my primary and the specialist. And next thing I know, I'm 38 years old. I'm on 14 prescriptions, right? I'm miserable. I'm suicidal. And my doctor says to me, Brian, they're allowing now medical marijuana, legalizing in the state of Florida. We think it would benefit you. And we'd like to take you off of a number of medications and put you on medical marijuana. At first, I had the recovery mindset and I thought, oh, I can't do that. That's a psychoactive compound. But the more I sat with myself, the more research I had done and realized that we actually have these endocannabinoid systems in our system. Our bodies are primed and we're meant to work with this medicine. So when I began my journey with medical marijuana in 2018, it really opened up my mind to think, okay, wow. So what I was told was wrong about certain things I was taking and were benefiting me. So now it opens up my awareness to what else is out there that can benefit me. So for me, it started with the medical marijuana. I'm a big advocate of medical marijuana. I love how there's different strains, how some can relax me, some can give me energy, some has pain relief qualities, whether it's a higher CBD factor or a higher CBN for hunger. I love how there's just such a variety of options for people these days. There's also the low THC, high CBD for kids and for teenagers or people that don't want that psychoactive component. So I think it's phenomenal where the research is going on this. And next I found psilocybin, magic mushrooms. And the magic mushrooms was another gateway for me to stop my antidepressant. I was taking an SSRI for 10 years. And looking back on it, the SSRI was actually dimming my light. It was keeping me small. I was in this like controlled box of not allowing myself to feel emotions. I was really just in this like apathetic place, right?
And I wouldn't say that you found psilocybin, you rediscovered psilocybin. We had, I'm not going to say worked with it before, I'd say experimented with it before on many occasions when we were younger in college. And then we stopped for all those years. And then we really did rediscover it. And it's a whole different ballgame now, working with this medicine.
A whole different ballgame. And now it's come to my awareness that these medicines allow us to find the God within us. That's what they're called, entheogens. Whereas an antidepressant, in my experience, takes the spirit out of me. It's the opposite. It doesn't take the inward, it's the outward. But it's easy to mask my symptoms or to blame this or to blame that. And it takes away the personal accountability that it takes to heal and to grow as a human being. So switching from the antidepressants, it was actually a pretty fast taper. I tapered off the antidepressants and I came on to the microdosing, later into larger doses as macrodosing as well. What I found was I felt better pretty quickly. I was more connected to myself. I was now allowing myself to feel all the range of emotions. I felt alive. My skin was healthier. My blood pressure was better. I'm not having the side effects of the prescriptions, the dry skin, the rosacea, the autoimmune conditions that were being flared up by the prescriptions are now all much minimized, right? So now my awareness continues to expand on the possibilities out there. And shortly after psilocybin, I found ayahuasca, and what ayahuasca has done for me, it's almost like when you shared your example, Marilisa, about the 3 boxes, right? And we have all this stuff in our unconscious, in our shadow, and these parts of us are unaware. And I almost feel like I was wearing some sunglasses, and the sunglasses were hiding my true self and the things that really were running the show. What ayahuasca has done for me was it ripped my sunglasses right off. And what she said was, hey, here's all this stuff you've been repressing that you need to incorporate in your life and look at. And that's where the therapy came into play for me. And I always suggest therapy for anybody I work with, anybody I take on this journey. It's paramount that someone has a therapist and a support group. because the work can be overwhelming without the connection and the community. And I love what you said about community. And they say that the quality of someone's life and the longevity and happiness is direct correlation to community, which is why I became a scholar of shamanism, because I'm a firm believer in rituals and community. And I love how shamanism is based on ritual. So it's really helped me connect with myself, my brothers and sisters, and utilizing plant medicine to continue to grow. And it's not a quick fix. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. These substances are very powerful. They can do a lot of good and they can do a lot of harm. So it's very important, I think, to use discernment and reverence and know why you're doing, how you're doing it, who you're doing it with, when really having the tools available to you. Like Jeremy, you mentioned, all these different tools we have. I think while one tool may work better for another person and that person may use another tool, it's important that we're at least educated on what options are out there for us. Beginning with a non-psychoactive component such as CBD, which is a wonderful medicine. Like you said, there's been so much research around the CBD helping cancer patients, epilepsy, autism, depression, anemia. The list goes on. It almost helps every single ailment, right?
Yes.
So it's like these medicines are available to us. And it's wonderful that you're bringing these to the awareness of people. And I love that we're talking about this in this space. And I really hope that to the listener out there, like there are other options out there. And my job as a transformational coach, healer, and a medicine man is to make sure that the medical doctors and the prescriptions are the last place we go. We try other things first. And I do think that there is a place for the Western medicine and the doctors. I think they do some wonderful things, right? If I break a bone or if I need a liver transplant, I am going to see a medical doctor, right? But
Absolutely.
if I'm depressed and if I'm having some autoimmune issues, maybe I'm not going to go see a medical doctor at this point in time. Maybe I'll try.
See Shaman Schwartz.
Shaman Schwartz.
No,
And
and that's exactly it too. It's what other resources are available? We've lost the concept of the village doctor, the village shaman. Who are the elders that we go to say, hey? And circling back to what I said about who we're raised by, my mother was very traditional Catholic, said the rosary, did all that. But she was a therapist. She was far advanced for people that were like that Irish Catholic. And the thing that she got to a point where she was watching me do all these alternative things. And she said, I understand why you do all this stuff. And I looked at her one day and I said, because you're a perfect example of what not to do for self-care. And she just laughed. We laughed about it. And she just said, you're so fresh. And I continued on my journey. And now I know I am healing all of those generations of women that have come before me. My family is healing. I am healing and doing that healing for my mother, my grandmothers, my great-grandmothers, my aunts, all who suffered trauma throughout their lives, but had no or limited resources to heal. So I'm doing my work and I keep doing my work, and anybody that you approach needs to be doing their work. You know, you have to interview that shaman, interview the therapist, interview any healer. Where are you at in your own journey? So, yeah, I wanted to throw that piece in there. I've also got my own history with the psilocybin and all of that. And it was when I can remember it saying, wow, how you know there's a God. And it was, and I was in my 20s and people are just like, could you be quiet? Stop. Oh my, this is so awesome.
Yeah, and I can't say this enough about these psychedelics specifically and having these experiences. The integration and the support is so unbelievably important. You can go and have an experience that's in many ways a religious experience, a spiritual transformation, an awakening. You could have such a shock to the system that in the moment it could be incredibly powerful and you could feel like you found the answer to existence. And then you go from the ceremony or the space that you had that experience and you implant yourself back into the grind of Western civilization and Western culture, the work hard, be productive all the time, on all these old programs that were installed in us. And it could just entirely blow your head up and it could spiral you out of control. So every time I tell people about these experiences, I always have that one caveat. I say, yeah, it's amazing, it's transformational, but it does require you to put the work in on the other side of it. Otherwise, in many cases, not only could it be not beneficial, it could be detrimental to you. right?
Yeah. And I put it as instead of a but, I make it
The
and
language that we
benefit
use
for
is so damn
Yeah.
important. And thank you for catching me there, right?
Yeah.
Why is it so hard? Why is it hard? Old programs die hard. They do.
Yeah. That hippocampus doesn't want to be written over.
Yep.
And this goes back, Jeremy, right now to the topic of the conversation is why is it so hard to do the things that we know we need to do to create the life that we want and deserve? And the answer is because we make them hard. But it's based on our unconscious patterns, our conscious patterns, our whole system, and how, like we talked about, like growth hurts. It's painful. It's painful. And I don't know about you, Jeremy. I don't like pain, but I'm starting to embrace the pain, and I'm starting to love the pain and to transmute the pain and know that in the pain, man, that's where my gold is. That's the silver lining.
That's where the
You know,
magic is
That's
residing.
the magic happens. And we have awakened at 40, right? We're 40 years old, right? So we have 40 years of unconscious programming. Some served us, but most did not serve. So I think it's even more important for us, Jeremy, to have some grace and compassion with ourselves as we learn to embody these new behaviors and these new ways of being. And I think it also goes back to what happens for a star to be born. We have to die. I know in my journey, it's been a nonstop death and rebirth process. And while I'm getting better at embracing the death, because I know on the other side is a rebirth, it still doesn't change the fact that it's uncomfortable and it can be scary. But that's even more importantly why we have, right, the support and the rituals and the mentors and the people that have gone through this before us and with us, so we all can help each other along in this little journey of life. And now we're here together, talking, helping, having these insights, these wonderful epiphanies, and hopefully sharing this message with our listeners.
I think I'm dying.
What a
Brian.
blessing.
I think I'm dying,
I
Brian.
want to say something really quick. You both are young enough to be my sons, and I love listening to men connect and work on healing. It's something that I want for my son, for our sons, for the planet. The men doing the healing work. And it's awesome because women have always been pushed to be the healers, and we were burned at the stake for being healers. Hopefully we're shifting that around, but it really is the men that need to be bringing this forward and talking about this stuff called healing and being able to have our emotions and that it's okay to experience something and just keep moving through it. You don't have to stay stuck in it. That it's okay if you're like, all of a sudden you're sad and you feel like crying and you cry and you move forward. You feel angry about something, you say, oh, I feel really angry about this. And you move forward. You know, that you two men are both doing something to move men forward in the healing process. Because it's women who come to therapy most often. And men don't usually start to do this work until they're in their 40s, which has always been. And I love it. And I love working with men in my practice because they're actually waking up. Sam Keen and The Fire in the Belly and the Iron John Bly, who wrote, there's some books that were written back in the 80s and 90s about men and helping men heal, but so few understood it or got it. I'm grateful to be invited here and to be a part of this.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And that's one of those things that was instilled into many of us from an early age. The role of men and women and men having to be tough and not being able to be vulnerable and be emotional. And that's just so wrong, right? Stuff from an early age to all people. It's so important.
Well, they did all these studies with girls and they found teenage girls lost their voice and their sense of that they own their lives and their voice by teenagers. When they started to do the research on men, they found that men lose it. They know the code before they can speak it. Men lose their ability to have all of their feelings between the ages of 3 and 5. Men know the code of silence before they can speak it or read it. They know it. They're taught to stop having their feelings. It's that fall and skin your knee and the parent says, oh, that didn't hurt, brush it off. And, oh, boys don't cry. And some of it's shifting, but it's because of men like the two of you that are creating that shift.
Thank you, Marilisa. And yes, it's sad, but it's also powerful. And also one of the main reasons I know a lot of the men I work with, when I ask someone, what's one of the biggest things you struggle with? They say shame. And that's one of the biggest things I struggle with on my journey is shame, right? Because I learned to be quiet at a very young age, 3, 4, or 5 years old, then to speak up and be my true self. So in my awakening, anytime I was acting from a place of self, I would say almost any time I would have to deal with some shame coming up. And I
Yeah.
realized how I've manipulated people and I've put this egoic persona, right? And the third box up here of who I want the world to see who I am. But guess what? That's not who I am. Now I'm a lot more integrated whole self. But prior to my awakening and my healing, it really kept me stuck in this shameful pattern of continuing to manifest more experiences and more things that just continued to reiterate how ashamed I was of myself.
Yeah. I really like
It's like,
Brene Brown's work on shame.
yes,
Shame and
yes,
vulnerability. Her
yes,
stuff
yes,
is
yes,
amazing.
yes. And that's where also the plant medicine has really helped me, specifically psilocybin. Psilocybin, I feel, works very good on the emotional body.
Mhm.
And actually, the reason why I even started the men's workshops and the men's retreats was because of a psilocybin journey I had, where a great spirit communicated to me during COVID and said, hey, you need to get the men together. They need you. It's time to become vulnerable. It's time to learn how to become human again. We're all learning how to become human again. When I was taught to be a machine. I was taught to be quiet. I was taught to obey. I was taught to not show feelings. I was taught to do as I told. And all these things just kept me disconnected from my truth and my light. And it feels so good to be in touch with that part of ourselves now. And I owe it to, partially to plant medicine.
Rediscovering yourself. This goes
And
back
to
to what you said.
friends.
This goes back to what you said, Marilisa, about we all have this within us from the start. We're all born perfect, really, and we get corrupted by these outside influences. But we all, and it's really, yeah, the plant medicine. I love what you said, Brian. It's coming back to that and rediscovering and going back to really the beginning and clearing up a lot of these traumas that we've experienced throughout our life. Really,
We can't hear you anymore. I don't know what you just did.
I had some distractions going on. It's okay. A lot of commotion over there.
Rural moments.
Yeah. Oh, so I want to shift away from the plant medicine, and I want to talk about another thing that you both have deeply in common, and it's crystals. It's something that we've talked about this at length before. All of us have, independently of each other. With my thoughts about crystals prior to my going through this journey, I was really associating the whole crystal game with the woo, lots of woo, but I've become more aware of this, of energies and all these different things. So I'm curious to hear from both of you as somewhat of experts in that field as to what role crystals play in shifting energy, and are they tools or are they just mirrors?
Oh, they're tools. When you think about historically looking at the pyramids in Egypt, each pyramid in Egypt had a huge quartz crystal at all 4 points because they knew the energy. They now know that the pyramids were like electrical transmitters. I don't know to where or what, but that they were transmitting energy. So you know that on a physical level, quartz is a transmitter. Quartz has been at every single pyramid. They were huge circular discs that were just quartz. So every religious ceremony, all the religions use crystals. Every native tribe uses crystals. Everybody has always used crystals in one form or another. The testing that they've done, the YouTube show Adam Ruins Everything, he was like, crystals don't work. And he brought in to all of his people that prove that it doesn't do anything. What we know is that they all have energy. Everything has energy attached to it. And when people are looking at crystals, it's what particular crystal heals what part of your body. And at its minimum, it does no harm. At minimum, it does no harm. Maybe to your pocketbook sometimes, but in general, does no harm.
Tell Brian about the tourmaline incident that you had. Yes, I think this is interesting, that experience. You told me that if you had told me that 5 years ago, I'd roll my eyes and they'd come in my head and be like, shut up. But when you told it to me the other day or a few months ago, I was like, yes, I got it. Tell Brian about that. I think
It was so funny because I had a tourmaline necklace on and I was at this event and the stress levels were like beyond. The person organizing the event was disorganized. There was so many things that were wrong and I was trying to handle one crisis after another. I finally get everything handled, get everything reset, move forward. And I go, my tourmaline went. I was like, what the hell just happened? And I'm looking at my tourmaline and I've got a chunk, it's missing. The bottom half of it is just missing. And my friend said, obviously it absorbed enough energy.
Yeah. Max capacity.
And then I have another tourmaline incident. So in my office, I have all these tourmaline that I sell. It's tourmaline and it's in a wood stand. They're big chunks. And I have one was backed up against the wall where the therapist that was there, she's an ABA therapist. So she treats kids that are pretty emotional and it's a lot. And it was in the corner that backed up against her office. I've just started moving things around and the tourmaline in the corner fell apart. The one that was backed up against her office fell into pieces and it was a big chunk. So I've got all these pieces that are waiting to go into my garden because that's what they say, return it to the earth. But when it exploded off my neck, that was funny. So now I've got both of my sisters wearing tourmaline. Nobody believed me. And I was like, no, seriously, it works. It works. And then when I moved it away from the wall that I had that was backed up against this other therapist wall, I was like, okay, there's another one down. But yeah, it's so interesting.
So it's undeniable what these crystals can do.
Absolutely
I'll share with you
undeniable.
my experience with crystals when I first found crystals. I was working a very high energy, high stressful job for a large mortgage institution down in South Florida. And I started to feel the energies of the place I was working at. I started to get to work feeling good in the morning. By lunchtime, my energies were shot. I was picking up everyone else's emotions. I was looking back on it, I was just this big sponge. I was walking in this office. I was a big sponge. I would go home and take everyone's stuff with me. So at the same time, I was in counseling for therapy. I was in therapy. And my therapist says to me, Brian, I'm going to give you a project. She says, I want you to go buy a shungite bracelet, a shungite necklace, a black tourmaline ring, and put a piece in your pocket. And she said, go to work and let me know how you feel. I kid you not, Marilisa. I go to work that day with my fancy shungite bracelet from Russia and my fancy tourmaline ring. I would say the energies that I felt were reduced by 75%. And at the same time, the crystals got very hot. During my time at that job, many crystals would break.
Yep.
I was replacing crystals all the time. Sometimes I'll disappear for a little bit and I come back. But at the end of the day, it opened my eyes to like, wow, what else do these magical minerals do? And then I dove down the rabbit hole of how that grounding, astral travel, communication, protection, health, balance, like you name it, there is a crystal there that will help you on your journey.
Absolutely.
So kudos and thank you for selling these magical crystals and doing this work as well. And I continue to have my favorite crystals. The crystals, the shamanistic knowledges and teachings view, they believe that crystals have a consciousness. I don't know yes or no. I'm leaning more towards yes, but they're definitely.
I have two examples to give you.
Yeah.
Three. So I have these two women. Andy did the podcast with me in January. He's one of these people that actually speaks to the crystals. They have opinions. They don't like to be put in certain places. They want to be put here. And then I had somebody else come in who is my bookkeeper, who also talks to the crystals. And they let her know, they let both of these women know, I don't like to be here. I don't want to be there. I want to be here. You were in my office. You were in my store, Jeremy, when it happened one time. He and I were standing there. I think Margie was there too. And we're just standing there talking. And one of the crystals threw itself off the shelf.
Yeah. Well,
Nobody's near it. It's been sitting there forever. And it threw itself off the shelf. And my friend who talks to the crystal said, oh, he did not like it there. He wanted to be over here. I'm like, okay, I don't. And then I had another incident where I had this big crystal. It looked like argonite. I have no idea what it was. Couldn't figure it out, but it was in a wood stand. And one of my other friends who's into psilocybin and he does all of that. I'll have to connect the two of you. Brian, he said, I got it in a garage sale. I really liked it, but it's so I paid $250 for it. I'm like, okay. My friend buys it. And then she's like, you know what? We need to figure out what that stone is. I'm like, okay. She said, I've been talking to the stone. I'm like, okay. She starts giving me details about this stone's history. So I get on my phone and I start looking it up. By her giving me this information of what the stone is telling her, and most people are going to think this is like Fruit Loops, but I was actually able to locate the stone, identify the stone, and be able to tell what it was. I was like, because it was an odd stone from China. It had been part of this dynasty and this. And I said to her, if we figured out that was worth $10,000, you need to give me more money.
Wow.
Or just from her having a conversation and coming up with these details about the part of China that it came from, about the family that it was associated with, I actually found the stone. So there's a consciousness there. Not all of us are able to tap into it. So it's there, and it is super like.
So that being
Yeah,
said,
you
I have,
gotta
a que-
think
I,
of
have a,
things.
I have a question for you, Marilisa. So there are two crystals that I've had a hard time connecting with and wearing.
Okay.
So one is blue kyanite
Okay.
and one is moldavite. Okay, so the blue kyanite, over the years, I have a very nice blue kyanite necklace. And whenever I wear it, I feel flushed. I feel flushed, and I feel the energy isn't quite moving up and down me the way it should. Moving forward, I know there's some energy blocks that I'm working through, but I'm wondering if the blue kyanite was just mirroring some of that in my body. I'm not quite sure yet. Another one, the moldavite, would give me just the craziest heart.
I stopped first with the kyanite. With the kyanite, it's a blue stone. It's connected to your voice. It's connected to your throat chakra and about finding your voice and being able to express yourself. And if you're feeling blocked in any other energy center, if you've got trauma that you're trying to deal with, if you have intimate issues that you're trying to deal with, anger issues, that kyanite is like, no, you are not wearing me until you deal with this rest of this shit. That's the kyanite. That's its voice. It's not. And go ahead with the moldavite. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I want to explain
that
that.
makes perfect sense. I took a shamanism training workshop last year, and we did a meditation to find your spirit mineral. And mine's blue kyanite. But I have not been able yet to wear it comfortably. So it's in my room, peacefully on my bedside, just saying, hey, when you're ready, I'm ready.
It's waiting for you when you're ready, my
It's
brother.
waiting for me. And then moldavite's an interesting crystal, right? They say it comes from somewhere else.
Russia. Well, they think
Right.
it's a meteorite. Yeah.
The meter. And when I hold moldavite or I even have it near me, I feel very anxious. And no matter what I do, it won't go away.
Yep. It just means you're not ready for it. So moldavite is considered one of the most powerful crystals there. Moldavite is one of the few that opens up all 7 chakras at the same time. It opens up everything. So I've had grown men, because I won't allow anybody to buy it until they hold it. And if they're neutral, no reaction or giddy or whatever, okay, you can buy it. And because I've had grown men, like big trainers, and they're like, yeah, it's no big deal. And they take it and they're like, ooh, I'm feeling a little nauseous. I'm dizzy, nauseous. I'm like, you're not ready for this stone. And they're like, oh, that is so weird. And moldavite is like that. And it's also one of those stones that hides for me sometimes. I was invited to a wedding randomly 2 weeks ago. And so I went to put on the ring, and I have a moldavite ring. I emptied out my jewelry box, everything. I'm like, where is the ring? But not find it to save my life. The next day when I'm like, all right, let me put everything back in the jewelry box. It was sitting right there. It was black. But I sell it and I have it in a ring and I have some loose pieces. But I don't sell it to anybody that doesn't hold it first. Because of what we're most conscious of are the 7 chakras, but we have so many more. And it's just one of those things that's a super opener. It's called a super crystal for a reason. It opens everything up. So the teenager will say, we will ruin your life. Don't ever get moldavite. And yet it's just one of those crystals that you need to be prepared. I had one time somebody call me to try and return the ring. So I don't feel so good. I said, well, that's why I made you hold it before you bought it. You know, she never followed up with coming back, but it was like, yeah.
Wow.
What is that?
So Jeremy, these examples are just more evidence, right? More evidence-based that these crystals do help with transformation.
Yep.
And their true nature, that's what they're doing, is they're transmuters. And that's what they're doing. They're rearranging energies, right, to make them more balanced. And when the energies are off inside of us, some of the crystals realistically can help us balance and align. And some of the crystals can throw us off because we haven't done enough work on ourselves to be balanced enough to have these crystals now be our ally.
Correct. And that I like that they're allies, and they're allies in healing. And we need as many allies in healing as we possibly can come up with. And there's many out there. So it's about reaching out, figuring out who you connect the most with, because our healing also comes from that connection. It's like even looking for a therapist. Your therapist can have the best credentials in the world, but if you don't connect with that person, It doesn't matter the modality. It doesn't matter the school of training. Connection. Everything is about connection. And that's how we heal.
Indeed. So we're we're running close to my hard stop on time here. Obviously, so much more to discuss on these topics. We didn't even really dig too deep into the therapy side, but I think that we can do a part 2 of this at some point in the near future where we continue this discussion, because all this stuff is extremely fascinating to me. Really is.
Sounds good.
So with that, I will leave everyone. If you found this content useful, don't forget to subscribe, all that fun stuff. If we want to know from you, if you're listening to this and you're into crystals, what's your favorite crystal? Or maybe if you're into cannabis, what's your favorite strain that's going around right now? We want to hear from you. We always love your feedback and your insights. We thank you all for joining us on this magical journey to nirvana. And we look forward to seeing you all next time on Microdose the Mind. Everyone take care. And remember, we only have this one life to live. Let's live it to the fullest and lean into uncomfortability and really realize our true potential. Thank you all for joining us. Take care.
Aho. Thank you.
Aho. Aho.
Aho.
Thanks for tuning in to Microdose the Mind. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with a friend and help us spread the word about the magic of microdosing. Be sure to follow us on social media for all the latest updates and insights. And remember, while we love our tiny doses, sometimes you just need to go big. Just make sure you're in the right set and setting. Until next time, keep your mind open and ready for growth.